Alright, the Thunder Dragon Emperor is here, drinking the Emperor's blood, so let's begin. So first off, let's start off with the non-stride encounter generic Bellicosti Dragon, which is also Kagero. It's a grade 2 with 10k power and the skill is. Of course, the first skill is that if your Vanguard is a clan while you have no cards in the G zone, it gets all the following abilities, where the first one is Auto. When placed on rearguard, cost Energy Blast 3, put a card from your hand to soul to draw 2 cards. It's basically like Nemin, except that it works with any Dragon Empire deck that is non-stride. The idea here is to skip the cross ride, and you draw 2 cards on top of it, which is actually very nice. And spoiler alert, the blood is of course going to be a cross ride, so this might even be played in the blood. But yeah, that's basically the idea right here for the first part, is literally skipping the cross ride. But the second skill is Auto Rearguard. When your Vanguard attacks, plus 5k power in the end of the turn. This is just pretty generic. Obviously, when it comes to Overlord, you're going to get a multi-attacking Vanguard, so of course this is going to get power multiple times. But if you're playing any other Dragon Empire deck, very likely this is not going to get power up multiple times. But overall, it's pretty good. Lets you filter your cards and also skipping cross rides. And speaking of skipping cross rides, we go to Demonic Dragon Numcation, which is grade 2 with 10k power, and the skill is the first one is that if your Vanguard is Narukami, it's treated as Narukami. Very important, especially for searching. In which the second skill is Auto. When placed on rearguard from hand, if your Vanguard is Narukami, look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose either one Vermillion or one Narukami card or one Eternal Thunderbolt from among them. Reveal it, put your hand, of course, over your deck. If you reveal a card, put a card from your hand to soul or discard it. Not only that this searches from your top 7, but it also basically skips your cross ride once again. And another thing it does is that it could even set up your soul or drop zone for basically Rising Phoenix or Eternal Thunderbolt, which is actually huge for this one card that you just must run 4 of. But the final skill just makes it even better, where Auto Rearguard. When this card attacks, if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Vermillion and it's also Narukami, you can counter last 1 plus 10k power in the end of battle, and then at the end of that battle, find this unit. The cool thing about this is that it clears up your board so you can do your Rising Phoenix. And speaking of Rising Phoenix, it's actually supposed to interact with Rising Phoenix because Rising Phoenix skill activates whether you bind on your opponent's side or even your side. And since this binds itself, Rising Phoenix gets triggered and you can just call it. But funny enough, it also gives you soul, which is also very helpful, and it also does your search and even sets up both soul and drop zone, so it's a must play. And now for the Thunder Dragon Empire to strike again. Dragonic Kaiser of Vermillion, Plato, which is a grade 3 with 10k power, and the skill is Count Vanguard. During your turn, if your soul has Dragonic Kaiser of Vermillion, yes, exactly that name, this card gets plus 5k power. Then if your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, crit plus 1, and all your front row gets plus 5k. Funny enough, Venus Lucier has the same exact skill. But basically the main reason why you just want to skip the cross ride is mainly for this skill, just because you'll be at full power right off the bat. And that early game crit pressure can be very huge as well, especially since original Vermillion kind of does the same thing but locked with another skill, and it does the counterblast with it, comparing to this, which is free. But anyway, second skill, Act Vanguard. Once per turn, cost Soul Blast 1 into your turn. When this card attacks, choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, and this unit battles those units along with your opponent's vanguards at once. Basically gets the multiple unit attack skill just like the original, except you use soul instead of counterblast, which can be quite huge considering that this deck doesn't use as much soul other than from Dread Scythe. And your power gaining is separate, which is now free. But anyway, third skill, Auto Vanguard. Once per turn, at the end of this card attack, if you play a normal order this turn, and your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less, cost this card a card from your hand, choose one of your opponent's Vanguard, and deal 1 damage. Yes, it strikes your opponent once again, which is basically the same as the original one. Overall, it kind of does the same exact thing, except that this time the gaining power part is free and separated from the multi-attacking skill, and also gets an extra crit, which can actually be very huge, especially since it's early game. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the original one from set 6 and set 9, where the one from set 6 just does one thing, and then set 9 just basically is an improvement of the same skill. But this is a very huge upgrade for the fact that you're using soul instead of counterblast. Considering that we're using a little more counterblast over the years, the fact that you're saving your counterblast is actually quite huge. So for that, it's already a huge upgrade. Now question is it worth skipping the cross ride, or is it worth just cross riding it? It is personal preferences, but if you actually do the full-on cross ride, you can actually save 3 spots in your main deck, considering that you don't need any more use of regular Vermillion. But if you are going to skip the cross ride, you're going to need to rely on its support. So it is personal preference here if you want that extra space or not. But in my opinion, it might be worth skipping the cross ride. And finally, here's the secret rare, And so that's it for this reveal of Dragonic Kaiser Vermillion the Blood. What do you guys think of it? Overall, it's pretty cool. Pretty much the same as the original, but it's a bit of an upgrade just because of a change of costs. And also it has crit pressure. But in that, there's really not much to say about it, and overall it's just pretty nice. And Vermillion was one of my favorite units ever designed, so I'm just glad that they decided to bring the blood after for so long, so I'm just excited to play it. But in that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.